I don't worry o'er the future, for I know what Jesus said. And today I'll walk beside him, for he knows what is ahead. Many things about tomorrow I don't seem to understand, but I know who holds tomorrow, and I know who holds my hand. I don't know about tomorrow. It might bring me poverty, but the one who feeds the sparrow is the one who stands by me. And the path that be my portion might be through the flame or flood, and the presence goes before me, and I covered with his blood. Many things about tomorrow I don't seem to understand, but I know who holds tomorrow, and I know who holds my hand. Every step is getting brighter as the golden stairs I climb. Every burden's getting lighter, every cloud is silver line. There the sun is always shining, there no tear will dim the eye. At the ending of the rainbow, where the mountain touches the sky. Many things about tomorrow I don't seem to understand, but I know who holds tomorrow, and I know who holds my hand, and I know who holds my hand.
That God does hold tomorrow, and he holds us in his hands. So as long as we continue to walk with him, let him guide us, we'll be all right. Earlier in the week, I had an interview, and I thank you all for your continual prayers. And I had asked Emily, I go, how does Daddy look? And she goes, you look like a church pastor. So I figured I'd dress up today since I'm up here speaking. So the first installment of Agents of Everlasting Change, which I did about a month and a half ago, we went over, it's called the ABCs of Evangelism. The first thing we went over was just becoming that agent of change that God calls us to be in this world of injustice. And then last month was the second installment, which was entitled, too low? You good? All right. All right, so the second installment was entitled Able and Available, where we learned that our greatest qualification is our experience with being with Jesus, being available to what he is able to do through us. We learned that God's able if we are available, and that his power needs our presence. So we must always make ourselves available to him, and he'll do wondrous works through us. Now today we're going to move on to the letter B, and the ABCs of evangelism. In order to fulfill heaven's command in working to relieve the sorrows of earth, we have to have two things. We have to be bold, and we have to be beautiful. I'm sure some of you folks know the soap opera, The Bold and the Beautiful. I've never really watched it. My mom was more of a Channel 7, soap opera person, so General Hospital, One Life to Live, all of that stuff. But we got to remember that in order for us to really help and bring people to know Jesus Christ, we have to be bold and we have to be beautiful. Not long ago, there was a news article that told a story of self-sacrificing love. It was about this couple named Danny and Rachel Smith. They had 5 miscarriages. You could imagine after even the first one, it kind of makes you, wonder if having a child is something that you're going to have. And then you go through a second, a third, a fourth, and you're just thinking, why? Why am I going through this? But eventually, they finally gave birth to a baby boy named Matthew. He was their miracle child. He was truly their gift from God. One night after putting him to bed, they decided to cook dinner, after the baby was laid to rest. And, just like most parents, you go through your long day of work, even if it's at home running around after the kids, you're exhausted. So they sat down to catch their breath just for a moment. And they fell asleep with the oven on, with the stove on. And, 45 minutes later, they woke up gasping for breath, surrounded by thick black smoke. The whole house was on fire. After Danny got Rachel safely out of the house, he went back to get the baby. But he was forced back by the flames and billowing black clouds of smoke. He tried 4 times but couldn't see a thing. The smoke was too thick, so he couldn't find his way to the baby. It seemed like it was too late, but Rachel knew that she had to do something. The neighbors were screaming at her to stay outside, but all she could do was think about her baby. She ran into the burning house and by a miracle of grace found baby Matthew's room. She picked up his limp body, wrapped it in a blanket, and made her way out. All of them were rushed to the hospital and treated for their burns and smoke inhalation. Rachel's throat was burned. She lost her voice and has permanent damage. They lost their home and everything in it, but all of that doesn't matter. All that matters is that they were able to save their baby. Mother Rachel said, "I couldn't face life without my precious baby." Now, most of us as men, as some of us being fathers, we like to think that we're these bold, brave guys that'll run into a burning building to save our child. But there's something in us that just makes us almost rationalize that it's too late. There's nothing that we can do. But as a mom, and I can only imagine, there's something about a mom who becomes more brave than any man could possibly be. But what in the world would compel somebody to boldly run into a burning building? Now, everybody knows that a mother's love is stronger than anything in the world. And that's exactly what it was. Her love was that powerful that it made her run back into that burning house to save their baby. The love for those who will be lost in the flames. When Rachel saw her son Matthew about to perish in the fire, she could not sit there and watch him burn. She was willing to boldly go into the fire to save her son. God's agents of change will be willing to do the same. The Bible depicts the lost as burning in fire. Jude 1:23 says, "Others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire." But how does this happen? What enables an agent of everlasting change to do this? Again, we have to have at least 2 of these characteristics. The first one, we have to be bold. We have to have the boldness of justice. And number 2, we have to have the beauty of mercy. We need to be bold and beautiful in our witness for Christ. Ephesians 6:19 says, "And for me, that utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel." When we see others in spiritual danger, we will be bold in bringing salvation. If our cause is just, then we will have boldness to fulfill our just cause. Like Paul, we will not be ashamed of the gospel of Christ. Like Isaiah, we will not cease to cry aloud and spare not and lift up our voice like a trumpet. Like Esther, we will not watch God's people destroyed without using our voice to intercede. Like Nehemiah, we will not rest content in the palace until walls of truth are repaired. Like David, we will not back down from the trash-talking giants of the world. And you all know we have those each and every single day when we profess our love for Jesus Christ. People always try to, deter us from that, question us, why do we believe in something that, we can't even see. But we need to be just like David and not back down. And like Elijah, we will not be afraid to call the people of God to a firm decision. Like Joshua, we will not be afraid to infiltrate enemy territory and claim the promised land. Education, page 57 says, "The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who will not be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right though the heavens fall." Our unjust world needs men and women who are willing to sacrifice comfort in order to stand with fiery conviction. I wonder if there's anyone here that's willing to stand in the fire to save people. So then what is the spark that ignites the fire of boldness? There's this story of a Native American chief. It says, boldness for Christ will be ignited by understanding something that a Native American chief understood, which caused him to convert to Christianity. So many of you guys know that started either being Catholic or not having a particular religion when you left that church or left whatever belief you had and joined the Adventist church. There was a lot of, there's a lot of boldness in order to do that. A lot of terror within families that happen when you leave one church and go to another. But you guys did bold. So the story, he was the chief. He was asked by his people of the tribe why he became a Christian. And he responded with an acted parable, an object lesson from nature. He gathered a pile of dry leaves and placed an earthworm in the midst of the leaves. He ignited the pile of leaves from the outer perimeter. The fire began to burn closer and closer to the worm in the middle of the pile. Just when it seemed like the worm would be scorched, that's when the chief put his hand in the fire, grabbed the worm, and laid it on the cool earth and said, "That's why I'm a Christian. That's what Jesus did for me. Knowing what Jesus did for me inspires in me holy boldness to live and work for him." Boldness for Christ does not come from the desire to be right or prove others wrong. Boldness for Christ comes from beholding the boldness of Christ as he came to rescue us. Jesus boldly went into the fire for each and every single one of us. If you want the holy boldness of Christ, say amen. Amen. But remember though, we need more than just the holy boldness. We also need heavenly beauty. Romans 10:15 says, "How beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things." So if you look at the verse again, it says, "How beautiful are the feet." It doesn't say how beautiful are the faces or how beautiful is the mouth or the hands. It says how beautiful are the feet. Now, what does it mean to have beautiful feet? I'm sure many of you go to the nail salon and get your pedicures to have the beautiful feet, but it's not that kind of beautiful feet. Now, remember, when we preach with our mouths, but we walk with our feet. God is calling us not only to talk the talk, but he's also having us walk the walk. So we all know that saying, talk the talk, but walk the walk. It does us no good if we just keep on talking, but our actions don't show the same thing. Now, what makes the feet of God's messengers so beautiful? In Psalm 149, verse 4, it says, "The Lord takes pleasure in his people. He will beautify the meek with salvation." The pedicure of heaven is in God making us meek in the feet. We must be meek in the way that we walk. Meekness is not weakness, but rather strength under control. It's not only about what we say, but also the spirit in which we say it. The message we have for the world is a bold message. We got to remember that. Bringing people to Christ is bold, but it must be delivered in the context of heavenly beauty. It's not just the message that's important, but the manner, the method, and motive is also important. We can't go out there and just try to hammer it into people's heads. We have to do it in a certain way. It's all about how you say things and how you do things. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15 says, "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear." Basically, with beauty and boldness. While we are never to be ashamed to speak truth, we must do it with deep humility and meekness. Our bold proclamation must be connected with a beautiful demonstration. We are to be loud in the mouth, but also meek in the feet. We need to be bold and beautiful in our witness for Christ. Only then can God use us to change the world for Him. You see all the people out there who are, whenever there's like the pride festivals, and they're out there with their signs that say God hates such and such and whatnot. They're speaking boldly. They're being very bold, but they're not being beautiful. There's a way to rebuke the sins of others, and being out there with signs and shouting at them and yelling at them and saying God hates them is not the way to do it. Now, so how do we find this perfect balance? Sometimes it's difficult because we have extremes in the church and extremes in the world. God says, "You will hear my voice speaking to you, whether you turn to the right or to the left, saying, 'This is the way, walk ye in it.' But wait, what way is that?" In Micah 6:8 it says, "He hath shown thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God." Boldness is the result of doing justly. Beauty is the result of loving mercy. Having justice gives us holy boldness to call sin by its right name. Having mercy gives us heavenly beauty to attract people to God's righteous name. Justice makes wrongs right, while mercy makes the right attractive. We need both in order to be balanced. We need holy boldness in our proclamation of justice and heavenly beauty in our demonstration of mercy. As I mentioned before in a previous sermon about some of the superheroes of faith, one of which is Joseph. He was an agent of change in a world of injustice, a shining light for justice and mercy in the darkness of the Egyptian palace. We all remember he was sold into bondage by his own brothers, forced to be a slave in a foreign land. It wasn't fair. He did nothing to deserve such treatment. Joseph was a victim of satanic injustice. He was only seeking the welfare and blessing of his brothers, but they gave him evil for good and hatred for love. They abused his kindness and took advantage of his meekness. He was cruelly rejected by his own brothers. Can you imagine any of you who have siblings, if they decided to sell you to become a slave, because they were jealous of you, jealous of the love their parents were showing you instead of them? Maybe some of you have been there. Maybe some of you are currently going through that. Maybe you're a parent who is disrespected by an ungrateful, belligerent child. Maybe you're abandoned by a negligent, absentee parent. Maybe you're abused by one who was supposed to be there to protect you. Maybe you're brokenhearted by the unfaithfulness of a cheating spouse, or betrayed by the gossip of a backstabbing friend. Maybe you're unloved by those who profess Christ on lips but do not possess Christ in their hearts. Maybe you feel rejected by a God who seems to not care about your life. That's exactly where Joseph was. But remember what I said in the first sermon of everlasting agents of everlasting change. Injustice will either break us or make us. It will either callous our conscience or compel us to action. Now, what did Joseph do in this situation of justice? So if we fast forward, into the Bible further on, because of his faithfulness, Joseph is exalted right next to the throne. As a right-hand man of Pharaoh, he had the power to administer justice. Now the famine forces the sons of Jacob to seek help from Egypt. Upon seeing his betrayers, Joseph is unsure if they have come to repentance. So he tests them to see if their hearts have been changed over the years. He hides his silver cup in their sack of food in order to accuse them of theft. When the cup is found, they are now forced to stand before the one they had betrayed. Not yet knowing the identity of Joseph, they acknowledge their guilt. In Genesis 44:16 says, Then Judah said, What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Here we are, my Lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup was found. The words they spoke to Joseph expresses the condition of everyone as we stand before God. What can we possibly say to God that will clear ourselves? What can we possibly say to him that says, I did this, I sinned, I did something wrong. What can we say to say, hey, can you forgive us? There's really no words that we can speak to clear us of our great sin in betraying our Lord. We deserve to be slaves forever. We owe a debt that not even eternity can pay back. So now Joseph is compelled to reveal his true identity. In Genesis 45:3 it says, And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. The brothers of Joseph are now brought face to face with their sin. They now realize that the brother whom they hated and betrayed yet lives. Now fear was filling their hearts, and they trembled with terror in the presence of Joseph's power, because Joseph now had the ability to basically cause them to reap what they sowed. Death is the only thing that they justly deserved. They sold them into slavery, because even slavery would be an act of mercy. So now the tables were turned on his brothers. Joseph had the upper hand. He has what we call nowadays the home field advantage. He now has an opportunity to seek vengeance and to administer justice. He has the power and the position to give them what they rightfully deserve, to do to them what they did to him many years ago, make them pay for the sins they had committed against him. We all know that term, an eye for an eye. A lot of people like to say, well, he hit me, so I'm going to hit him back, give him what he deserves. But that's definitely wasn't in Joseph's heart at the time. So it says here, he had that opportunity to let them taste the bitterness of bondage. He can boldly make them slaves, and he would be perfectly just in doing so. What would you do? Like, honestly, what would you do if one of your brothers, sold you into slavery and you had the chance to do the same? Would you guys do the same, or would you guys have that the merciful nature and just say, you know what, you're forgiven? I know if my brother sold me, dude, it'd be on. He would not be a happy camper if I had the opportunity. But thankfully, there's prayer beforehand, and God will move me in a compassionate way. So he responds to them like how Jesus responds to us when we stand guilty before him. Oh, hear the words of Jesus to us and the words of Joseph to them. And Joseph said unto his brethren, Come near to me, I pray you. See, he doesn't turn them away, but he invites them to come closer to him. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother. So notice, he still considers them family. He says, I'm your brother. Despite what they did to him, he sees them as, I'm still yours and you're still mine. Just as it is with us, as we sin and act a fool against God, Jesus is still not ashamed to call us brethren. We are still his, and he is still ours. And then, whom ye sold into Egypt. Joseph did not ignore nor excuse their sin. He boldly called it out by its right name. He said, you sold me. He said it straight out to them. He didn't hold any punches. He called them out by their sin. Joseph was bold, but he was also beautiful. And he continued saying, now therefore. Now what should be his next words? He should curse them to death. He should say, now it's my turn to sell you into slavery. But he says, be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me here, but God. Joseph gave not what they deserved, which was justice, but what they needed, which was mercy. He did not ignore nor excuse their sin. Rather, he forgave their sin. He gives life to those who sought to take his life. Instead of administering justice, he showed mercy and grace. He was able to rebuke sin while still embracing the sinner. He was meek, but surely not weak, for it is an act of divine power to forgive those who have hurt us. Joseph's response shows the perfect balance of boldness and beauty. Who have you hurt that you need to ask forgiveness to today? Who has hurt you that you need to free by giving them forgiveness today? You know, one of my friends, his dad had recently passed away, and I told one of our other friends about it, about the funeral service that was going to happen, not knowing that those two had a falling out. And the friend that I contacted, he contacted him to reach out to him to give his condolences and to basically try to make amends of their falling out. I get a phone call from my friend whose father passed away, and he's like, hey, you know, my buddy Nan, he's like, Nan called me up, and, you know, I guess you told him? And I'm like, yeah. And then he goes and he tells me about the falling out that they had, not into detail. And I was like, oops, you know, I didn't know, you know, because I always, you know, growing up, we've known each other since kindergarten, so we have a long history together. And so I knew that they were close, but I didn't know about the falling out. But the death of my friend Brian's father helped them reach that level of forgiveness. You know, Brian was able to forgive Nan for whatever happened between them. And in doing so, that also, Nan and I also had a falling out in high school. And it's lasted this long. This is 24 years now. You know, our friendship has been, you know, like non-existent because of our falling out. So this death, the forgiveness that was brought forth during this time, you know, it happened between the two of them, and it happened to both of us. You know, there was an unforgiving spirit, you know, and having an unforgiving spirit, it's like double slavery. You know, if you refuse to forgive someone, you know, you're holding them in a prison of guilt. But at the same time, you know, you also hold yourself in a prison of bitterness and resentment. You know, Jesus actually set his brothers free by forgiving them, but also set himself free of resentment towards his brothers by forgiving them. Now, what enabled Joseph to respond this way? He understood at least two things. He understood that the battle wasn't against flesh and blood. You know, Joseph did not hold their sin against them, for he knew whom their satanic puppet master was. To Satan, Joseph pointed the blame. So instead of pointing the blame at his brothers, it was pointed to Satan. And secondly, he knew that justice could only be established by mercy. Joseph knew that the only way to change the fruit is to change the root. He knew that in order to destroy the fruit of injustice in his brother's actions, he first had to remove from their hearts the roots of sin and selfishness that caused those actions. Now, what conquers the root of sin? Only the seed of love. But what kind of love needs to be planted? Only the divine love that is demonstrated in divine mercy. Injustice is defeated by mercy. Mercy establishes justice. So if you allow me to explain here, I said, God's mercy is what makes us just in two ways, both legally in the records of heaven, but also makes us just or righteous experientially in our lives on earth. The justice of God pardons the sin and empowers the sinner to gain victory over that sin, to justify us and sanctify us, to transform us, and to make us transformers in the world. When confronted with their sin, Joseph's betrayers knew that slavery was just. They knew they were worthy of nothing else but to rot in prison for the rest of their lives. So when Joseph had mercy on them, what happened in their hearts? Their hatred, their pride, their selfishness, they were washed away by grace. The same mercy that pardoned them also empowered them to live a new life. A life consumed with loving service to him who showed them mercy. Ever after they would be consumed with gratitude for so rich salvation, hatred turned to love, pride turned to humility, doubt turned to faith, fear turned to joy. They were not only saved from a literal prison, but also the prison of their guilt and shame. They now became prisoners of love. Joseph knew that justice could only be established by mercy. Thus Joseph upheld and established justice by showing mercy. As Joseph did this to his betrayers, and as Jesus did the same at the cross. At the cross we see the perfect blend of justice and mercy, the perfect balance of boldness and beauty. We must go and do likewise. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. As darkness can only be conquered by light, injustice can only be conquered by mercy. And mercy is what establishes justice in the world." When we experience the power of the cross, it will too make us boldly just in dealing with sin and beautifully merciful when dealing with sinners. If we want to be agents of change, this is what we need in our witness for Christ, to proclaim with our lips and demonstrate with our lives. Again, it's not just what we say, but how we say it and how we live out our lives. We can't say, don't, it's not good to steal, and then we go out and, buy like a bootleg DVD or burn something illegally or whatever it may be. We gotta act the same way that we talk. This is how we embrace the sinner without embracing the sin. They say love the sinner but hate the sin, right? That's what we have to do. We have to continue to love the sinner, but we also have to, in our actions, show them what they're doing is wrong, but in a loving way. This is the perfect balance of justice and mercy, boldness and beauty. It's bold, but it's not cold. It's strong, but it's not wrong. It's meek, but it's not weak. It's comforting, but not compromising. It is loud in the mouth and meek in the feet. It is the bold roar of a lion and the humble walk of a lamb. As agents of everlasting change, we need to be balanced. We need both justice and mercy, truth and love, law and grace, boldness and beauty. For having just one or the other results in us perishing either upon the jagged rocks of hard legalism or the quicksand of soft liberalism. Both are equally dangerous. And so let's be just, standing for the right. Let us be merciful, making the right attractive. Let us be bold, and let us be beautiful. In order to be an agent of change, the change must first happen in you. Let us be the change we desire to see in the world by allowing God to change you. This is my prayer. Thank you.
I don't know about you, I was excited down there listening to Todd. He will be regularly speaking here. So I told my wife the other night, we're so happy because we're seeing people getting ready to take over. So let's take care of our kids. God has given talents. Not all will be speakers. Other people will be demonstrators of what others have spoken. Some will have both, but all of us need to be like Jesus. So I'm thankful for Todd. The message is wonderful. It's powerful. It's balanced. The problem we have is imbalance, even within our own systems. So I'd like to welcome everybody who came today. Some are sick. Others are traveling. We'd like to welcome Brother Marty and Sister City. We haven't seen you in a while. God bless you. And I'm playing the piano because forgive me, I'm very limited. But Alex and Ruben are in the other church ministering, doing what Brother Todd says. God bless you.